Ever since I watched The White Lotus, I have been obsessed with Aubrey Plaza, and what better way to strengthen a parasocial relationship than by reading all of their favourite books. Naturally, I flew to the Celeb Bookrex account on Instagram. If you are unaware of it, let this be your lesson. Celeb Bookrex actually has a 2-part post on Aubrey Plaza. Clearly she's quite the reader. Sorry if you hear any outside noise, it's because it is 1 billion degrees here, so I've got all of the windows open and some people are putting their bins out a day late. Anyway, that's none of my business. The books we have on the list are Olga Dies Dreaming, which I have right here, The Bell Jar, The Crying of Lot 49, and Woman. Hi, it's Chloe from the future here. I'm not going to read Woman in the end because I don't really want to. Instead of that, I'm going to read A Moveable Feast by Ernest Hemingway. I have never read Hemingway before, and Aubrey describes it as literary comfort food, which is what I'm in the mood for right now. I will be reading these books, vlogging my experience, and telling you how I feel about them, whether it matches the personality that I've given Aubrey Plaza in my head. Obviously the cover was like the first thing that drew me to it. I am a sucker for a colourful cover. It is 2017 and Olga and her brother are bold-faced names in New York. Prieto is a popular congressman representing their gentrifying Latinx neighbourhood in Brooklyn, while Olga is the Tony wedding planner for Manhattan's power brokers. Despite their alluring public lives, behind closed doors, things are far less rosy. Sure, Olga can orchestrate the love lives of the 1%, but she can't seem to find her own until she meets Matteo. Aubrey says she would like to see this book turned into a Netflix series, so I'm just getting ahead on the reading before that happens. I am very intrigued by the storyline. On one hand, it seems like a kind of light, funky romance. I don't know whether that's just in my brain because the colour is so bright, but on the other hand, it feels quite serious and like there are some quite sort of serious themes woven in there. I think wedding planner in my head is just a job that only exists in rom-coms. I know I'm wrong for that, but it's just where my brain goes. Wish me luck. I will see you in a moment. I'm gonna start reading this book. Hello friends. I am 100 pages in to Olga Dies Dreaming and I'm enjoying it so far. You know when you're reading something you're like, okay, this is good, but how is it all gonna come together? Like where is this build up gonna go? And it really could go either way. Was that explained badly? I just love reading books about cities or like based in cities. It's quite an interesting combo. I know I kind of joked earlier about wedding planning in my head being like a rom-com, but then the book also seems to be quite a serious one. I found that is the case so far. It feels like quite serious and it's not exactly humorous. But then equally it's a little bit spicy, like there are spicy moments. And it does almost feel a bit rom-com-y. So yeah, a lot to play for. I'll see you in a bit. Good morning. I've only just noticed that my hairdo today is not quite what I imagined it was when I put it up without a mirror. We have finished Olga Dies Dreaming. I actually did warm to it in the end. I can't remember exactly what I said, but I think I wasn't totally sold. One thing I will say is that it's like the last sort of quarter of the book felt like it was a little bit rushed. Like my favourite part of the book were probably the second and third quarters, but either side of that it lost me a little bit, and I thought that was a shame because the characters themselves have a lot to give. In terms of Aubrey Plaza, this is, I mean, I don't know her, but let me just consider how much closer I feel to her now. How's the parasocial relationship going? A little check-in. I get it, to be honest. And specifically about this book, she said she wanted to see it turned into a series, which I think is a really good shout. I felt like it wrapped up a bit quickly. I feel like a TV show. Usually it's annoying because they like eke out books for all their worth, but in the case of this book, I think if it was made a bit longer, if it was split up a bit more into episodes, maybe you would get a little bit more out of this story. I have to say, like on reflection, I did find the dialogue sometimes a bit contrived, and it was a bit like Like, considering the topic, and I feel like what the author was trying to do, the execution at times felt a bit like immature. Is that the right word? I always feel bad being mean about books because I'm like, I haven't written a book. Anyway, so it was a bit, it sort of in a way felt like it was aimed at a younger audience, but I know it isn't. Let's look at the next one, The Bell Jar. So I feel pretty ashamed to have not read this yet. It's just one of those books that you almost hear too much about, and so you forget to read it, you know? And I actually don't know like what it's about. I know that Sylvia Plath is known for being depressing and depressed. The Bell Jar chronicles the crack up of Esther Greenwood. Esther? I don't really say that name out loud very often. Esther Greenwood, brilliant, beautiful, and enormously talented. They read a book about me. And successful. They didn't. Sorry. But slowly going under, maybe for the last time, Sylvia Plath masterfully draws the reader into Esther's breakdown and such intensity that Esther's insanity becomes completely real and even rational, as probable and accessible an experience as going to the movies. Aubrey Plaza describes it as a book that makes her feel seen. I actually thought this book was autobiographical. Maybe I'm just like merging Sylvia Plath's life with the books she's written, but I'm excited to read it, and I was quite relieved to find that this book is not too long. Whenever there's a book that feels like a classic or feels really well known, I am always really surprised when it's less than like 400 pages long. Okay, so obviously The Bell Jar is really, really iconic, but I just want to read you this line that is in the first few paragraphs. It's like the opening breath of the book. And I read it and I was just like, yeah, okay, I get it, Sylvia, go off. I felt very still and very empty, the way the eye of a tornado must feel, moving dully along in the middle of the surrounding hullabaloo. It's like, ooh, that is such a good way to describe that feeling. Like, it's an interesting way, but it's also precise, which I feel is what you're always going for when you're writing. Like, that is a great description. Okay. I just finished The Bell Jar, and I'm in my, it's clearly just my update spot. I think it's because the window's there, so the lighting is good, and also this sofa is where I spend 70% of my waking hours. Anyway, I just finished The Bell Jar. I got the illustrated edition, and I actually wish I got a book, like a physical book, because, well, because I absolutely loved this book. I'm so glad that I've been forced to read it finally. Thank you, Aubrey Plaza. Aubrey? I've like, filming this video has made me forget her name, which I know it sounds weird, but I've now just said it too much, and I've convinced myself, like, I've overthought it to the point where I just don't trust my thoughts. Aubrey Plaza. What am I doing? The parasocial relationship bonds are weakening as we speak. I am so glad I've been forced to read this book. Books that are as famous as this, you end up not reading because they're just so famous, especially classics. There's this feeling that you're like, oh, I'll get to it at some point. There are so many classic books out there, it can wait, because it's not like a hot topic. You don't get the urge that you do with books that are sort of coming out recently or currently. The writing is extraordinary. It really reminds me what really good writing is like, the sort of depth that really well written books can get into your brain, and like how immersed you feel in it and how accurately, you know, feelings and scenes are described. It's just incomparable to some writing. So yeah, I love The Bell Jar. It's definitely got some slightly dodgy ideas in there. It is from kind of 50 years ago, but I have to say that overall, books like this that are well written like this really remind me how weirdly kind of timeless things become when they're really well written. So it reminds me of what's that book? East of Eden. My brain is all over the place today. There's something about characters that are well written. I feel like authors just zone in on the humanity of them and on, you know, the like flaws or the kind of slightly, like, the thought processes are so human and the characters are so vivid that it makes the book feel timeless. You know, even though you have these moments that remind you that the book is from a certain time, overall a lot of the feelings they describe and a lot of the conflict is still relatable. So yeah, incredible book, some incredible lines in here, not that long. Thank you, Aubrey. On to the next. What is the next one actually? I am meant to be reading Crying of Lot 49, but it's apparently been delivered. I got like a second-hand version, but it hasn't actually arrived, and I'm getting worried and I'm sad because I hate when things get lost. It's such a faff. Anyway, not the point. A Moveable feast it is. I'll tell you how it goes. This just in, A Moveable Feast is apparently a memoir based on Hemingway's time in Paris before he became famous, which adds an interesting dimension. Is this a mistake? Reading it before reading his other books? I'm doing it anyway. So, hey guys, so we have a bit of an emergency on our hands because A Moveable Feast has sent me into a reading slump, which I wasn't willing to admit to myself for the past few days, but I've been reading this book, I actually don't know for how long. It feels like I've been reading this one book for a week and I'm like a third of the way through and it's not a very long book. I can just feel myself not reaching for it as easily and not reading it for as long, and I'm not engaged. Like, I have to reread stuff and it's a bit of a nightmare, and I'm a bit sad because I mean I was quite enjoying the books that I read from this list up until now, and it's looking like a dark mark on the Aubrey recommended list. She described it as like literary comfort food, which I don't know. I think it was maybe a little bit unwise to read Ernest Hemingway without having read any more of his stuff. It would have probably given me a bit of juice. It's not a really bad book, it's just not gripping me. There isn't much of a story and things seem to just sort of happen and it's all unconnected, and I'm sure if you were a fan it would feel like a really nice kind of intimate portrayal of his life in Paris, and the descriptions of the city are incredible and you can tell he's like a good writer, whatever that means. But I don't know, it's just not sticking for me, and I think I'm in a mindset at the moment where I need a bit of juice, you know? I need a bit of juice to get me reading. So yeah, that's where we're at, bit of a sad update. I'm gonna do some more reading today, hopefully get into it. I'm worried, wish me luck. It is with great sadness that I am announcing my first DNF. I would way rather just put it down and maybe return to it when I have a better understanding of the context or just want to read a slightly tricky classic. But yeah, not now. And I'm really shocked. I'm really shocked. From Aubrey's description, I was ready for like something else, I guess, something different. And especially considering the other books on her book list, the way I've not enjoyed this has really surprised me. Next up we have The Crying of Lot 49. This really caught my eye because it sounded weird. The story was so weird. I don't really understand it. Suffused with rich satire, chaotic brilliance, verbal turbulence, and wild humour. So yeah, it was that sentence that really caught my eye. The Crying of Lot 49 opens as Oedipia Mars describes that she has been made executrix of a former lover's estate. The performance of her duties sets her on a strange trail of detection in which bizarre characters crowd in to help or confuse her, but gradually death, drugs, madness and marriage combine to leave Oedipus in isolation on the threshold of revelation, awaiting the crying of Lot 49. Aubrey describes this book as a book that sealed a friendship. That's very intriguing. Every aspect of this choice is intriguing. If this maybe could seal my friendship with her, I would appreciate that. This is making me realise two things. One, I'm really bad at pronouncing names. If it's a name that I haven't said out loud before, I am terrible at it, so apologies for all the names, I definitely just got wrong there. And two, there are a lot of famous books I just like don't know anything about. I quite enjoy it. I feel like that's the beauty of it. I go into books with just like a completely empty brain, and obviously sometimes that means you are shocked and disappointed, but it also means sometimes you are shocked in a really good way. Guys, we have a little bit of a problem on our hands because I have just finished The Crying of Lot 49 and I didn't enjoy it very much. It's a very confusing story to read. Like, it doesn't flow very well. It is kind of meant to be a bit of a descent into madness, not a descent into madness, but you are meant to question what's real and what's not. It is meant to be a very mysterious tale, but nevertheless I just didn't like it, and I found loads of the sentences really long and really confusing, and it was to the point where, because I just finished the book and I googled like summary because I was like, did I miss things, and I kind of just like checked my understanding against the summary, and it's like, no, I didn't. I just didn't enjoy it. I think Thomas Pynchon is meant to be a challenging author to read, very Marmitey. He's just known to be not an easy author. One of the comments that I actually read said, this is the kind of book that makes people hate reading. And I was like, you know what? Fair enough. For about half the book, the first half of the book, I was fully not enjoying it. From the halfway point, I did start to get into it in the sense that I was like, okay, I understand the story, I'm getting used to the style, but even then, I didn't enjoy it very much. I think it's going to be like a 2-star read for me, and that's just very sad because Aubrey described this book as a book that sealed a friendship. So I'm afraid like our friendship is not being sealed by this book. This book is pushing us further apart. Obviously we were on the brink of a magical friendship before this book, so that's really sad. I think what's also wild, especially obviously I DNF'd the Hemingway book that I read before this one, it's just how different those two books were to specifically Olga Dies Dreaming. Like, Olga Dies Dreaming felt like a story that had been like underthought a little bit, like loads of potential and then slightly underthought, and then The Crying of Lot 49 felt incredibly like laboured and kind of overthought and overcomplicated. And it's just really interesting that both, like, I can't really pin down Aubrey's reading style and what her interests are. She has range. Anyway, I think that's it from me. Yeah, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.